Would you like to leave BFA for Shadowlands with something gorgeous and fairly memorable to take with you? Well, I'm sure you would. So how about me giving you very focused, prepared advice on how to relatively easily clear horrific visions of Orgrimmar and Stormwind with 5 masks active, so that you can earn the title of the Faceless and this wonderful, gorgeous mount. Stick around, let's talk about this. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm your host Gyro. Instead of publishing yet another full clear of a horrific vision video, I thought I'll make it more useful for you and compile a focused flow of tips and recommendations that will make your 5 masks full clear relatively easy. I recommend that you don't skip ahead, as after this quick intro and some context and disclaimers, tips will be given pretty quickly, and I would hate for you to miss an important one if you just fast forward. Let's address one blatantly obvious thing before we dive into it all. 5 mask clears are never easy, by definition, unless you are of course decked out in 470s plus gear and have done this a million times. But I've worked really hard as a casual player in my solo pursuit of the Faceless title and the Black Serpent of Anzoth mount, and was able to finally get those last week, relying very heavily on very few specific points that, once I've executed them properly, they made this achievement relatively easy, I have to say, at the end of the day, compared to all of my prior, less educated attempts. So this is what I mean when I tell you in the title and the thumbnail, learn an easy way to clear horrific visions with 5 masks active as a casual player. Easy in this case means if you follow my tips, your journey will be much easier than anything that you could have experienced before, vastly increasing your chances of success. With this being said, let's jump into the tips. Tip number 1. Choose a high mobility class to clear your visions. My highest rate of successful clears was on my Havoc Demon Hunter, and I got the final achievement and the mount on Demon Hunter as well. You need to play the high mobility class you know best. It might be a monk, druid or a shaman, kind of thinking of those that I would pick for this job. And I know that people clear on slower classes that offer other types of advantages, such as Beastmaster Hunter. But I'm not here to debate this point, and I'm just here to offer my subjective opinion to my casual people. So Demon Hunter was my weapon of choice for this, you take your pick. Tip number 2. Learn all the basics for clearing horrific visions with no masks active, or maybe with a couple of very basic ones before trying to push for 5. This should be pretty obvious, but I need to point it out in case you are an all or nothing type of person, because that happens. Before going for 5 masks, you need to learn what each mask does, what madnesses exist in principle inside of a horrific vision, what colorful bottles will be giving you your sanity back, and which mobs and mini-bosses have the potential of causing you the most trouble in the run. Telling you about each mask in great detail would make this particular video too long and out of scope. This information is out of scope today. You need to have tried those masks, even if they were only like +1 mask runs that you've put on before, to see simply what exactly they do. Do not cheat your 5 mask attempts, do the right things and learn beforehand. Once again, because it is important, guys, 5 mask clear attempts are not the time to learn. They are the time to execute all mechanics and capitalize on your learnings. This is a critical point, no matter how simplistic it seems. How do you learn? Well, by watching my earlier videos for your specific classes. Hopefully I have some full clears for your classes of choice if it's not a Demon Hunter. Asking questions in the comments down below, I'd be happy to answer. watching other people's videos, reading guides on Wowhead, and finally, I hope that if you watch this particular guide, this particular compendium of tips to the very end, I hope it will help you a lot as well. Tip number 3. Try and pick a week without leaden foot or split personality debuffs. The Mask of the Pained will obviously double the madnesses for each area, so of course there is a high chance that you'll have to deal with leaden foot or split personality as an added annoyance here and there, but at the very least you won't have to deal with those as a constant baseline. It helps a lot actually. If I had to choose between the two though, I would try and avoid leaden foot and go ahead with split personality, as I did in my last successful 5 masks clear of Stormwind. Split personality is very annoying, but manageable. Tip number 4. Have your cloak maxed out at rank 15 and all Mother's Archive talents open. Hey, you wanted an easy 5 mask clear guide, right? Well, I'm telling you, what will make it relatively easy? Maximize your chances of success. Why cheat yourself or half prepare your character while you are about to deal with the highest difficulty of the horrific visions as they were designed by the developers? Can you do it without maxing things out? I guess so. I heard of people who do that, but they rely on something else. For example, on vastly overgearing the content. For example, having eye level 480 or something close to 480. So yes, you can do it theoretically, but as casuals in the ballpark of my item level that we'll talk about in the next point, it will be very hard and unfit for this guide. This is supposed to be an easy guide. Tip number 5. Aim to have an item level of about 460, which is achievable for a casual player who does what I do. And I've shared my gearing options, preferences with you, what to do in BFA in the previous videos that you're welcome to take a look at on my channel if you haven't already. I'd say do not try and push for 5 mask clears before reaching 460 plus minus a couple of eye level points. It doesn't matter if you want things to be relatively easy. Tip number 6. Use the right essences. With my major essence of choice for both Stormwind and Orgrimmar being Purification Protocol that is easily obtainable from Rust Bolt resistance. Go get it, it's on a lowish cooldown, does crazy amount of damage to grouped up smaller enemies that will make up the bulk of the mobs that you'll need to get through inside of a vision, and the instant cast of Purification Protocol as opposed to a cast time based essence of the Focusing Iris, for example, makes a huge difference in the heat of the fight too. Tip number 7, go get some ghastly goulash, kebabs and drums of fury. These are the only 3 buffs that you will need that I relied on in my clears. Ghastly goulash being the main non-negotiable must-have food buff for 5 mask clears. And kebabs will allow for situational regain of sanity when there are no other options available to you. Obviously, any other flasks or runes that will boost your stats a little would help you further, but I didn't use any of those for my successful clears. Drums of Fury are poor man's bloodlust or heroism, obviously. At item level 460, you will need to pop those in a couple of key places that I'll point out to you to get rid of the mini-bosses that will have a higher potential of killing you. Obviously, this is a bit easier for the classes with built-in abilities like Bloodlust, Heroism, such as Shaman, Mages, or even Beastmaster Hunter with the right exotic pet. Tip number 8. Pick an optimal path through the vision. Have a plan of how you'll traverse the visions before you walk in. Test it and practice it without any masks active as I suggested above. For Stormwind, I suggest simply starting to go through Dwarven District, then Old Town, then back to Cathedral Square using the portal from Matthias Shore, then Trade District, then Mage Tower area, and then go deal with Illyria. For Orgrimmar, I suggest going through the drag first, then dealing with Rexxar, then using the totem that throws you back to the entrance, then going left to the area that's at the very back of Orgrimmar, then returning to the Valley of Spirits, and then dealing with Thrall. Tip number 9. Crowd control as much as you can. And don't pull huge crowds of enemies unless you know the types of mobs really well and think that it is relatively safe. I'll leave this decision up to you. This is one critical moment that let me down many times in the past, more than you think. I got overconfident and pulled too much, or pulled what looked like a small group, only to discover that there were additional stealthies in the area who also joined the fight. So let's say instead of 4 relatively innocent mobs, I ended up with 8, 2 of which were also stunners. So particularly that happens in Old Town on the way to Matthias Shore in Stormwind, and there is a possibility of being overwhelmed if you pull too much trash in the Trade District too. In 5 mask runs, these scenarios usually mean death. As a Demon Hunter, I was relying as much on my damaging abilities as I did on an AoE stun and on the Essence, which is the Purification Protocol, because it has an effect of stunning aberrations. It's fantastic, especially fantastic in Orgrimmar. Again, you need to practice those pulls with no masks active or maybe 1 mask active to execute them perfectly in your 5 mask attempts. I cannot say this enough. Tip number 10. Watch out for the good color liquids as you go through the vision. And don't be shy to sit down and eat a kebab anytime after the fight, obviously out of combat, if your sanity falls below 50% or is close to falling below 50%. When you have your full 1000 plus points of sanity available without the Mask of the Long Night, obviously, a kebab or the good color bottle sometimes won't do all that much, and some people would say that it's not worth your time. But when you're running 5 masks, including the Mask of the Long Night that cuts your sanity in half, any of those good bottles and kebabs, they will give you 20% of sanity back, which is huge, I'm sure you would agree, so please do not underestimate it. Tip number 11. Consider using Drums of Fury or popping Bloodlust on the following occasions. So your mileage here will vary, because you might have no trouble killing one of those mini-bosses, or might have just used the Drums of Fury or Bloodlust already, and by the time you reach another one in my list of these little suggested mini-bosses, you might still have a debuff not allowing you to use it. So see for yourself how it goes. But I recommend Bloodlusting on Rexxar without a shadow of a doubt. Inquisitor Darkspeak, as his channeled sanity hurting beam is virtually unavoidable and does a lot of damage if you dance around with him for too long. Boundless Corruption near the Mage Tower, and funnily enough Thrall with 5 masks active. Optionally you could try using it on Matthias Shore. Normally I would not, because he disappears far too often to take full advantage of the haste buff. Same thing with Alleria, she is annoying and you might want to use your Bloodlust on her, especially if you're playing a ranged class and you can have your pet kind of mauling her the whole time. But for a melee class on Alleria, Bloodlust is kind of a waste of time, I found. Tip number 12. Stand right on top of Annihilator Lakhal, who is the first mini-boss of the drag, and he can be actually surprisingly damaging and surprisingly challenging if you don't do this right. If you stand right on top of him, his beam that he channels and that pushes you away and drains your sanity will miss you fully. You will be able to actually do it relatively easily. Tip number 13. Retreat behind the stump on Inquisitor Mshal, the second mini-boss of the drag, to avoid his Void Torrent. Void Torrent maybe doesn't do all that much sanity damage, but quadrupled by the Mask of Daredevil, it will hurt you, and most importantly, it will stun you and push you back, and you don't want that happening. Also try and burst his bubble before he does the AoE sanity damage that the stump won't protect you from. I wasn't able to do that, and I had to just take that sanity burst on the chin. You might be able to do better, I hope so. Tip number 14, absolutely use the skip in Rexxar area, relying on the food buff on Ghastly Goulash to sustain you by regaining your health while you jump along the waterfall rocks and get straight to his building while getting damaged by the debuff, obviously, bypassing a lot of the trash and saving yourself a lot of time. Tip number 15, Rexxar is particularly challenging with 5 masks active, so needs to be done right. First of all, I recommend using an orb on him, pulling him into the orb to make use of those extra seconds of front-loaded damage that you can dish out and you can absorb without worrying about any sanity losses. It will help you. I would also use drums or bloodlust on him, as I already mentioned. I would also use metamorphosis on him as a demon hunter or any other major class cooldown if you are not a demon hunter, obviously. Now, listen to this. This is very important. Kill his pigs first. Do the same on Thrall, as he will inherit, obviously, Rexxar's abilities. But if you ignore the pigs and tunnel vision the boss, thinking that you'll just blast them down as soon as possible, it won't happen and you will die. Kill the pigs, move out of the way of the smaller spawns that Rexxar spawns, and you will win. So to summarize the key points again, my friends, know your path, learn it, as well as the most dangerous mobs and mini bosses ahead of time, before attempting a 5 mask clear. Do not go in without health regenerating food buff, and don't attempt the run if you want it easy without maxing out your cloak first. Why make it harder for yourself? Don't pull too many mobs. Steady does it in here. In our case of people who don't overgear content severely and simply cannot brute force it. Be most mindful of the stunners, of the stunning bosses with capability to stun or incapacitate you. Be quick on your feet. That's why mainly we rely on high mobility class choice here. Don't underestimate things like the damage that eye stalks or mind twist tendrils, that they're called, can do to you with their searing gaze channeled damaging ability. They will absolutely melt you if you hesitate, or if you don't interrupt them, or simply don't blast them away, kill them too quickly. Finally, be ready to bloodlust on the mini bosses that cause the most of trouble to most of us. And that's all I can tell you about the tricks of how to make the achievement of this mount and of the title, clearing both Horrific Visions of Stormwind and Orgrimmar solo with 5 masks, as easy as you can. I hope you found it helpful, useful. There is kind of nothing, there are no miracles, you know? When you're not severely overgearing content and when you are in a decent item level range of say 460, like I was finally when I was able to do this, you just need to execute things perfectly, dodge the dangerous abilities, and know what kind of potential pitfalls are waiting for you here and there where you need a little bit of a boost, a little bit of a buff. Do a particular thing that will make all the difference. And I hope that I was able to point out a few of those to you in this video. If I did, if it helps you, please like the video, please tell YouTube algorithm that you enjoy my content. It's nice to see the club grow. And definitely your support here means a lot. If you can share the video with someone who you think, or maybe your little following on Twitter or somewhere else, who might benefit from this information as well, please do that. I really appreciate it. The more of us here, the merrier. And you're really helping me grow this channel to make it more fun for all of us. Thank you very much for watching. I wish you best of luck in clearing Horrific Visions before Shadowlands drops, so that we all can be faceless. Alright, thanks very much. I'll talk to you again in a couple of days' time. Bye bye.